Hello and welcome to Maths with Jacob. This lesson will focus on improper fractions. In previous videos we saw that a fraction has a numerator and a denominator. We saw that the numerator was smaller than the denominator. Let's look at some examples. The diagram to the left shows half of a square shaded green. So we're just looking at the shaded part only. So that represents half. Let us see what happens when we have two shaded halves of the square. So here's one shaded half and there's another shaded half. So what does that give us? A half plus a half, that gives us two halves. So can you see that there's one shaded half there, one shaded half there, put them together, you've got two shaded halves. So a half plus a half equals one whole, which equals 1. And there it is, that's one whole square, which is shaded. Let us look at three shaded halves. So if you've got a shaded half, plus another shaded half, plus another shaded half. So the above represents three halves, which are shaded. On the next slide, let us combine them. So we have a half, plus a half, plus a half. When you combine them, you get, there's one half there, there's one half there, and there's another half there. So, three halves, which is 1, 2, 3, which is 1, 2, 3, equals 1 and a half. 1, there's the 1 there, and there's the half. So, 3 halves equals 1 and a half. When we express a fraction in the form where the numerator is larger than the denominator, we have what is called an improper fraction. So they're improper fractions there because the numerator is larger than the denominator. Mixed numbers or mixed fractions. Improper fractions can be changed to mixed numbers or mixed fractions. We saw that in the diagram to the left where we had 3 over 2 was 1.5. So we just saw that here. Consider the following diagrams. Half plus a half plus a half plus a half plus a half. Remember, we're looking at the shaded sections. So here we have 5 halves. Combine those two together to give you that. Combine those two together to give you that. And what have you got left? You've got a half. So altogether you've got 1, 2 and a half. So you've got 5 halves. So those 5 halves that we combine together gives us 2.5. So that's the improper fraction changed to a mixed number. Let us look at a quarter of a circle. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 of them. And each of them is a quarter of a circle. When we add the above 5 quarters we get, well, there's 4 of them. So we've put 1, 2, 3, 4 to give us that part, and we have 1 left. So we've already seen that that's 5 quarters, but when we put them all together, what do we get? 1 and a quarter. 1 plus a quarter. So 5 over 4 gives us 1 and a quarter. Conversions without diagrams. So here's our improper fraction, for example, 7 over 2. Now how do we change that to a mixed number? Well, let's see. 7 over 2 is 6 over 2 plus 1 over 2. Of course, 6 plus 1 is 7. Look at this. 2 into 6 goes 3. That goes beautifully and evenly, and we've got a half left over. So that gives us 3 plus a half gives us 3.5. So 7 over 2 is the same as 3.5. Let's look at 14 over 3. Well, that's 12 over 3 plus 2 over 3. 3 into 12 goes 4. You've still got 2 over 3 left. 4 plus 2 over 3 is 4 2/3. So 14 over 3 is the same as 4 2/3. Example 3, 23 over 4. Well, that's 20 over 4 plus 3 over 4. Because 20 plus 3 is 23. 4 into 20 goes 5, that goes in evenly, and you've still got the 3/4 there. So 5 plus 3/4 is 5 3/4. So 23 over 4 is 5 3/4. So that's a very good way of changing the improper fraction to mixed numbers without using diagrams. And if you know your tables, they're pretty easy to do.